been looking for a podcast to help you transform your physical and mental? One that'll shoot you straight between the eyes with truth and no BS, helping you have the right mindset to accomplish things, the iron will and fortitude to follow through with what you say you're going to do. No excuses. Mark owns martial arts schools, and after 30 years, he has some real insight for real talk, real life, real conversations, motivational, fitness, self-defense, weight loss, live from the Great 1-8. This is Real Talk with Mark Cox.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Beyond the Mat, AlKarim. I'm looking forward to this talk. We got to spend a little bit of time right here before we went live. Super excited about kind of the topics we're going to talk about and what you kind of bring to the table to kind of help manage people's stresses and stuff like that. So with no further ado, let's get you introduced. I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself and where you live. You're in Canada. Go ahead and tell them where you're from and what you're doing, and then let's just dive right into some of these questions I got for you.
Sounds great. My name is AlKarim Chatur. I live in Oakville, Ontario. So if for anybody that's from Canada or not from Canada, it's sort of the city right in between Niagara Falls and Toronto. We're a small community. I'm married with my wife, who is a pharmacist, and I have two boys, two teenager or young men, I should call. I'm an energy practitioner, a coach, a consultant. And really, I put all of that together because I don't like putting it in silos. I call myself an intrapreneur because of the past experiences that I have and helping professionals and business owners to live a life of love, joy, and abundance by looking at the inside and making sure that we change the inside so that the outside is a reflection of exactly what you want to achieve, not that you're going out there and looking and fighting for what gives you temporary relief or joy.
Which is great. This is because I know myself, I wouldn't find myself enjoy all the time. I can tell you that, as an entrepreneur and as you got a lot of responsibilities as an entrepreneur on your back. And mostly it's not about you. It's mostly about who you're trying to take care of is where you kind of lose sleep and you have stress in your life is like, I have other people's lives in my hands. I'm trying to help shape and mold. And if I'm not delivering, I'm not holding up my end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think it would be a fallacy if you said that we all live in joy at all the time, because I'm far from that, right? Something small happens and it triggers you and it changes you and you change your energy and you change how you're feeling and the way you're vibrating, right? And I compare ourselves to being the sky or the clouds, right? The sky is always the same, no matter what it is, whether the sun is shining or it's cloudy. We tend to change as soon as something changes around us. The key is, can we remain at that equilibrium no matter what's happening around us? And that's how you create joy, because those small moments do not take away from your joy. And yes, the stresses and those responsibilities are going to be there. And often when we succumb to those, that's when we start struggling with ourselves internally.
Excellent. In your bio, I read this to you saying, having spent the majority of his life in a high-stress business environment, AlKarim comprehends the challenges of, I don't have my glasses on, from one's intended path, which often leads to overwhelming emotions such as fear, anger, and frustration. So I want to talk about that because I asked you right away, did you work in a corporate type setting? And you said you had a family business, and we went on. Let's talk about that and where. Since you decided to go coaching, you had to get some kind of, you had to get growth personally in order so you could coach. So let's talk about how that stress went in your life and what it was like. And let's talk about it being a family business, because you gave some kind of good points for that. I didn't really realize about the history of family businesses. So why don't we dabble into that real quick?
Yeah. So, just to give you a quick background, we came from really humble beginnings. Today is also my parents' 60th anniversary. So shout out to them, they're celebrating their diamond anniversary. And I reflect their life and our lives very much sort of like the diamond. My grandparents moved from India to Kenya and then to Tanzania. And there was a lot of struggle that they went through, but it was humble beginnings. But at some point, we had the right focus and energy, and the mindset was correct, where we had the Midas touch. Anything we touched actually turned to gold. But then things changed. And Mark, I was talking to you about this, and maybe I was just the culprit of the third generation, but most family businesses don't survive past the third generation. And some of those factors are very, very similar. The first generation will sort of start the business, the second generation builds on it, and the third generation destroys it. Now, there's a different aspects that people have said, it's because the third generation is spoiled and all of that stuff. I was far from spoiled. I was fortunate, but far from spoiled. But that stress that comes in, even if you're not in a corporate world, but in a family business or even any personal business, is that you are now, as you mentioned earlier, Mark, responsible for others, not only your customers, your clients, but your family as well. And in my case, we had multiple family businesses all together. And the stress was that if something went awry, then everything would start falling like a domino. So that stress to make sure that you're successful, to make sure that the family name stays intact, that the wealth of the family stays, that everybody's livelihoods dependent on it. Those are the kind of stresses that really, really became difficult. And once those challenges come your way, then they're beyond just a professional relationship, because now you are working with somebody that's your family that can call you out a lot harsher than it would be in a corporate environment. So that stress becomes even multiple fold. Because think of it, and when I talk about anger and frustration, I'll tell you that I used to be like that with my family. It's been about 5 years since I closed my business, and I closed my business for a tragic event that happened, and we can get into it later. But when my kids were growing up and I had that relationship with my wife at that point as well, they would not tell me things because this common denominator was that you're just going to get angry at us. Even today, after 5 years, there are moments I'll say, why didn't you tell me this? Why did you tell mom? And they go, well, you would have just gotten angry. That anger and frustration and fear comes into your internal life and your internal relationships as much as it happens in the business as well.
So tell me about this. This is my take on this, because I'm in a business where, my son's now kind of running alongside me, right? So I'm the first one. Mm-hmm. And I speak to my son quite often of this. I feel that where he falls short sometimes is the first generation, or me, as it goes. I had all the pitfalls. I had all the obstacles that really had to get over to get a business to stay afloat for 5 years and stuff like that. And then I started momentum, and I started building it. And I feel that Mike he didn't have all that. And I feel that that's a detriment in, there's nothing we can do about it. I don't want to go back. You don't want to go backwards and have to go through all that. But do you feel like going from first to second, now he does kind of listen to me, right, like that, and I'm kind of trying to see how it could go down to the third generation, where they just kind of think they probably know better than the first generation. You don't know what you're talking about. I can even see it in family amongst your kids, right? Your third child thinks they know everything. But what's your thought on that, on missing out on some of the growth process of growing a business?
So I would say there's a couple of things. I think often that second generation does not see that value or that knowledge base that comes in. And did I fall into that? Absolutely, right? I always thought that my parents did not know that, because we had gone through this, shift in generations, right? That we talk about the generation gap, but that knowledge is really, really important. I find the challenge is how we communicate that, right? Often with family, like I said, the challenge comes through, I've done it before, I know how this works, as opposed to having a structured policy and procedure where things can be validated through science or through technology or some sort of a manner where you can say, look, this has consistently worked with other people as it has worked with me. And so those experiences come in. But then I think it also works the opposite way, where the new generation knows new tools and technologies, and there's a resistance from the previous generation to adapt to those. And so the key is the communication. As long as you have an open communication where there is no fear that you are not able to speak to the other individual without any reprimand or repercussions. And this is where I felt my biggest challenge is that there was no voice for me. It was a challenge that came in because we have always done it this way. What do you know? You're not smart enough to be able to understand this. And as long as we're not looking at the second and third generation from that perspective, but giving them empowerment and saying, yes, I understand you're empowered to do this. Show me and prove it to me how it's done. And let me show you some of the ways you can avoid rebuilding that wheel. So I think it's a two-way thing. And as long as we remember that it's a two-way thing, then that's an open communication. When it's a one-way street, there is no way back.
So in your journey to become the coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it your decision to shut down a family business? Was that your decision?
I would say it wasn't my decision. It was the universe's decision. So
for
those of you,
okay,
yeah, an outside force caused it, right? So
Mm.
about 5 years ago, there was a fire that destroyed the business, and we could not recover back from it. Right. And so I had spent 20 years, so I moved from Edmonton to Toronto to start the furniture business, and literally a fire caused it. Had some major challenges settling with the insurance company as well, because the cause was unknown. Went on for 5 years. I tried to recover it, and again, I made that mistake of digging my own grave and sort of saying, I can do this. Often what comes into play, and it's for both sides, like, the question you mentioned earlier, is it the first generation or the second generation? There's one aspect that falls into play, which we really, really need to be careful about, is the ego. The first generation has the ego. I built this, so I know everybody. The second and third generation has the ego, which I had, and I'm not ashamed of saying it, is that I got to prove myself I'm smart enough to be able to do this. Mm-hmm. Right? And so when those egos clash, that becomes a challenge. And so to me, why did I become a coach is because I ended up losing the business, and I was in a very tough position. If you've done most of your business in a family environment for over 20 plus years, to try and do something else, nobody's going to hire you, because it's going to be, well, you're too smart in one way, or too experienced. And secondly, you don't have enough experience to be able to join some corporation, because you don't have their practices and the procedures and the policies and all of that stuff. So you caught between a hard rock and a hard place. So this is where I ran into that challenge. And so I first got introduced to a family friend who is in Africa by the name of Almas. And I had gone into this dark space after the fire, as you can appreciate, right? And I got a healing done from her. And she told me things that only I would have known. And I then clicked right away, is how that internal vibration, as I call it now, or the internal turmoil that was going on within me, was causing a lot of my outside to experience, right? We're energy beings at the end of the day. So what you're vibrating it is what you will attract. And that's why that communication with that second and third generation is really important. Because if you're vibrating and talking at one language, and the second generation is not at that same vibrational level, you're not communicating. Words is not communication. You need to be at that same wavelength to be able to communicate at that same level. When you're at that same wavelength, you make music. Anybody that's taken music knows if one person is playing one note and the other person is playing another note, you're going to have chaos. You're not going to have music. What we want to generate is music. So that's what happened, is when I got this. So when I started working with individuals in business and in professionals with my consulting and my energy healing, I realized that they were looking for a lot of coaching as well, because there was this gap that was there. And so I create this fusion now with the coaching, the energy healing, and the consulting, because I have the business background, I have the coaching, and I can help release some of those energy blockages that cause that lower vibration in our body.
So this came from after what happened to the business, you searched out this, realized what you have, and then you've created a coaching around it now. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So now I work with professionals and business owners to help them make sure that they are not falling into the same trap, that they have this ability to be able to communicate with other generations, and also changing their internal self. Because often what we're doing is as the business grows and the wealth generates, the focus changes. Very often we see that happening, right? We see that happening in every major family business, that there is this rivalry that happens, that the greed falls into place, or the change in structure comes into play, and things start crumbling. And so how does that stop you from growing and creating the legacies that we have of some of the other major organizations in the world that are corporations? And that is where my coaching is focused on.
So let's talk about what a typical client is looking for you in. Well, let's first of all, what's NRJI stand for? Let's talk about that first.
Sure. So NRJI is a play on words for energy, right? If you were to read it out, they would say NRG, right? That's energy. And that's where my company is called. So that's because I am an energy practitioner. I practice 9 different modalities, and I don't even go into the details anymore because I work with my clients to make sure that I work with what they require. So, I'm a body code, emotion code, Reiki practitioner, just ones that people would recognize and know, but then there's other ones as well. And that's how I started my business. And that's why the name is stuck, is energy. That was when I lost everything in the fire, I needed to do something. So that's where I started out from. That led into my coaching and consulting. So my typical client is somebody who is a professional, who is struggling to find that inner happiness and joy, that they're constantly out there, getting that next car or the next clothing or the next item or the next trip. Just had a client recently says, I'm going on a holiday, but I still don't have the happiness. So I upgraded my flight to a business class so that I would feel that I'm a little more, happier, and that I'm traveling business class, because that's still not giving me happiness. There's this inner gap, inner void that happens. And because we have that inner void and we don't know how to deal with that inner void, what we reflect out is anger, fear, anxiety. And so I work with my ideal client as that business owner or that professional who has got this gap and saying, well, you know what, I have everything, but financially I'm secure. I have a relationship, I have kids, but it's not all gelling together somehow. And I help them make that happen together so that their business is successful, their personal life is successful, their relationships are successful. And that's where you find that inner happiness.
Let's talk about so let's say I'm a typical client and I'm going to come in and talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of questions are asked out of the gate? What kind of questions do you ask of people?
Sure. So the first reason I ask is why? Why do you feel that way? Right? What are some of the areas that you think are lacking in yours? And often what will happen is you have this peripheral answer that comes in. My strategy always is to get to the root cause, right? And so I end up asking the same question 5 or 6 times, because the first time we are not vulnerable enough to be able to answer that question. We all live in this facade or a mask that we live in, and we compare our lives to everybody else out there. We're looking at social media posts. We're looking at the house that they're living in, or the places that they're going to define what they're like. And so we want to be like the Jones, right? And so we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to be exposed to say what I'm feeling inside. Like a client that I recently worked with, his first sentence when I asked him the question is, why do you want to talk to me? His was, will you talk to other people about me? Will you be posting about me? And will somebody else find out that I've spoken to you? They were not focused on how I'm going to feel better. Everything they were focused on what other person was going to think and say and feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the other person. It's about you. So we focus on the you. What is it that's missing in you? We tend to be like dandelions, right? Given that it's the summer weather. We see that dandelion grow, and what do? We take a lawn mower out to it, because that's the easy way to do it, right? Just cut it off and it's going to be gone. But what happens? Within the next week, the sun shines and it's back out again. So the way I work with my clients is, let's get to the root cause. Let's take the dandelion out from the root. What is it that's causing that vibration to be at a lower level? Because as soon as you raise your vibration to a higher level, and there's different mechanisms to do it, and there's no one formula. I don't give a Nescafe solution. Today, I'm not going to tell you that this is what you need to do, because if we all had Nescafe solutions, we'd all be doing it. Starbucks of the world would not be surviving if that was a coffee to drink.
Well, if I came to you,
right,
typical kind of business guy,
mm-hmm.
and do you find that, do you have people that are successful in business but feel they're not successful in life? Do you have that?
Most of the clients are in that position.
So their business thrives, but they're not happy.
Let's step back, Mark. Let's step back. I want to focus on that word success.
Okay.
Right? How do you define success would be my first question.
It's good. You asking me that question?
I am asking you that question.
I can tell you that as a younger man, success would have been cars and money in the bank. Exactly. Success to me today is that my children are self-sufficient without their dad. Right. In this chaos. That would be success to me. And then success would be that my employees, it's less about me as I get older.
Right.
And it's way more about others at this point in my life.
Right. And so that would be my first question, is when I talk to somebody and says, that I'm not happy, then I would ask them, what is that success? Because often what you're saying you want and the acts that you're doing are not reconciled. Right? So you are chasing after that wealth and cars and everything. I'm not referring to you individually, but I'm saying those clients that define success in one way, but are all on the opposite extreme. And that's that gap is where I help fill that. Right? Because if you're saying success to you is that your children are self-sufficient, that your employees are happy, that, are you able to give yourself some me time? Then I would say that's where success lies.
Interesting. Sandy here, this is a good friend of mine.
Sure.
She's asking the questions. What are some of the mechanisms used to raise vibrations once you've identified the root cause?
Thank you for asking that question, Sandy. There are a number of different ones. And like I said, I don't necessarily use one standard method, but I'll tell you one that works 100% of the time, right? And that is the practice of gratitude. Because we all have something to be grateful about. Where the focus goes, the energy flows, right? So often our vibration goes lower because we're focusing on what's not right yet, what I don't have, what I should have, that expectations. And when your expectations are not met, that's when you actually have those results of low vibrations. Because that person should have done this to me. I should have been able to do this. I should have been this at this point in my life. And we start focusing on that. So that is where that vibration lowers. So one guaranteed way to raise your vibration, which I do on a regular basis, and here's a challenge for your listeners, right? If you want to raise your vibration in the next 30 days, take one of these blank books and for 30 days, write down 10 things that you're grateful for every day without repeating yourself. That's 300 things that you're grateful for. And it could be as simple as, the grass is green outside. You see a bird and you say, wow, what a beautiful bird. I saw a bird today. We tend to find those big things that we want, those big rocks. Not everybody has those big rocks. But when you start small, it starts becoming bigger. You start now attracting everything that is good for you. And that's how you change that vibration. And that's just one simple technique that I use. There's a number of different ones, depending on the client. Again, I don't like giving Nescafe solutions. I like to work with the client to find out what suits them best. And there is no one way. A lot of people talk about meditation and mindfulness and listening to podcasts and stuff like that. But if you're not into that mode, no matter what you do, you're not going to connect with it. I try and find out what you're going to connect with so that it works for you.
Simple. It sounds so simple, but that ain't so simple.
You know what? Nothing is, right? Nothing is. Everything that we value, it has to go through a certain amount of stress and pressure.
That is correct. Everything's a fight. That is for sure.
Right. And that's where you get to it, right? Like, you're a person that goes to the gym frequently. I know that for sure, because you like that. And my son's like that. But the person that goes to the gym and the person that doesn't go to the gym, it's obvious, right? Physically, you can see the difference, but that's a lot of work that goes into it to be able to look like that. Watching pictures or YouTube channels is not going to get us there.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Right.
Yes, that is true. So practicing, that's great. That's a good question, Sandy. That's good questions. Sandy said, success to me is peace, freedom, and good health for self and my family.
Yeah. And you know what? I think we all aim for that. The question is, are we practicing that? And usually there's a gap between those two, right? So yes, I want peace. How often are you taking you time? Because peace is not going to come if you're on a hamster wheel.
That's true. That's true. I can tell you from in mine, I was just talking to my own children about this the other day and sitting in the hospital for a few days. You got a lot of downtime in there. You know what I mean? It sucks.
Yeah.
In there, you want to talk about a way to really mess your mind up? It is laying around there and getting caught up in your own head, okay?
Right.
Or your mortality, or, here I am in the hospital and doing this, and I have never experienced like taking time for myself. Anytime I do vacation, this is me personally, anytime I leave to go do something, there's some kind of work attached to it. I'm doing a seminar. I'm doing a black belt test. I'm doing something there, and then I'll spend a few days doing something, but there's always a work attached, because I feel I can't just go do that without compensating for the trip. I don't know why. It's just kind of a weird, it's just kind of weird in my head, right? And so I was sitting in the hospital. I remember this. This was last Tuesday. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do for these nurses? I had such awesome nurses, right? I loved them, all of them. They were so good to me. And so I said, well, let's see, their shift is off at 6:30 and the new shift is coming in. So at 7:00, everybody kind of splits out. So 6:30, the new one's coming in, the olds are going, and then, so I ordered DoorDash and I ordered donuts for the entire floor of my nurses.
Nice.
Okay. Right. Even ones I didn't use for me. Right. I said, this just make me feel good to do that. And I did that for them, and it just made their day. You know what I mean? Which made my day, which made me a lot happier and a lot less depressed being in the hospital. Okay.
Yeah.
I was excited when I went to walk. Every time I used the restroom, I would go for a walk for 2-3 laps. You know what I mean? Trying to get out of this situation I'm in. And I'd see them all enjoying their coffee and their donuts, and they're at their computers doing their thing. And that just made me feel good, man. It lifted me to a different level in the hospital, because I was super bummed. Right. So I said, well, I know me, if I'm really bummed out, if I go do something for somebody else, I feel a lot better.
Yeah. But what did you do? Right. The simple thing was gratitude, right? You expressed your gratitude towards them, but it made you feel better. Isn't that amazing?
I don't know why. It just does.
And that's the whole idea behind raising this vibration that Simon was talking about, right? Is you express gratitude in a small manner, and it will be multiple fold in yourself. That small act of gratitude, right? And that's why writing it down is so critical, because you are now going into your subconscious mind and rewriting some of that stories that we tell ourselves. right? A lot of the time, like I'm sure you've heard this with all the different podcasts that you've had and guests that you've had, that what we see on the top is only 10%. Our conscious mind is only 10%. 90% of it is at the subconscious level. So this lack of peace or health or quietness that we want, or success the way we define it, is because of all of those things that we have built for the last 20, 30, 40 years in our life in our subconscious mind. And gratitude allows us to rewrite all of those that are causing our limiting belief. I go one step beyond a limiting belief, and I know a lot of your listeners may not like this word, but it is the fact. I say it's not a limiting belief, it's a prison sentence that we give ourselves. I'm not talking about a physical prison sentence, but that prison sentence, what we keep on repeating on ourselves, that I'm looking for peace, but it never really happens, is because you have that other sentence that's in your subconscious mind. That's really what's holding you back, right? And so when you asked me earlier, how do I work with my clients? That's another way that I work with them, is to find out what is their prison sentence. What is it that's holding them back? What is it that's not giving that peace of mind that they're looking for?
Right. I think a lot of people, I really think a lot of people look for that. I've asked those questions. I asked those questions when I was laying up there for a while,
Right.
What is my purpose? Am I directing? Am I not spending enough time with people I love because I'm too busy in trying to make sure the studio stays afloat? It was different when it was just me, right? I just had to worry about me. I was the employee. I was the janitor. I was everything. I was the program director, the instructor. I was it all. So I didn't really have to, I had to worry about if I can sustain me. Now I have other families, when your son's married and, trying to get a wage that these, I don't know how your employees were, but my people here, they are so dedicated to the studio.
Yeah.
And they're not paid their worth. And not because if there was a way to pay their worth, it would be, it is, you know what I mean? I think about that all the time, on how thankful I am to have this group of people that are around me.
Well, listen, I totally hear you there. My first employee that I had stayed with me till about 8 years before the business started. And just because she actually gained her advanced education, and we could no longer offer her the skill sets that she had prepared herself for. So she needed to go and work somewhere else, but I still keep in touch with her. My second employee was with me till we actually closed down totally. And to date, we keep in touch. And I say that they were not my employees, they were my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I hear the same in you, right? And that is really, really key when you have a business, especially when you have a family-owned business or a small business, is you need to treat your employees even more valuable than your clients, because they are the front-facing for what your company represents to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
I love what Sandy is saying. Your employees are unmatched. I love that.
Yeah. She's such a good lady, this one.
Appreciate that, Sandy.
Yeah, she's a good lady. I'm going to have her on. What do you hear her story? You'll be freaking out on what
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. Yes.
People will.
You know what?
Yeah,
it's interesting. We use the word story, right? We all have our stories. The key is, do we live in that story, or is that story just a story?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true.
Right?
And yes, one thing I can tell you, man, one thing I've learned in this new, outside of in the author realm and the speaking realm, is the stories that people have are just of I've learned more about the human spirit watching what it can do more than anything in this realm, in the CLA, even all those people that were there too. I was shocked.
Well,
And
you know,
so,
we normally take the story and we make it us. What we have to remember is that story is not us. The universe will always give us instances that are there to prepare us for our journey. Our life is our journey. It's not one incident or something like that. So for the longest time, I made this fire my story. I can't do this because of the fire. I lost this because of the fire. I've lost a lot of money because of the fire. Our relationships changed because of the fire. Until one day I asked the question, what would I be without this story? And so I invite the listeners to ask that. So if you're stuck in a story, you not feel like you're not moving forward, whether it's in your business or your personal life, step back and ask that question, what would I be without this story? And can the story now continue to write and it's not a story, it's just a chapter in your life. And can you make another chapter in your life?
Yes, I love that. That's good. That's good. That's good. It's really good. I learned something great today. The gratitude thing was really good. Was good to hear today, because I feel that that's definitely a true, just a true statement in all. When and I lack that sometimes, just so you know, and I know this personally in my head. Not that I'm not grateful for everybody, but sometimes, it takes 2 seconds to stop and say hello, how you guys doing,
Right.
and stuff like that. And I even find myself hard times doing that sometimes. I'm kind of focusing on something else. I'm coming in the studio. I got all this day on my head, and I don't stop 1 second here and just turn around to the parents that are all watching and saying, "Hey, how you doing today? How's everybody doing?" Good.
Yeah.
And I catch myself constantly doing it.
Yeah.
And I know it's something that has to change.
Yeah.
And I'll sit in my office and go, "Ugh, I just did it again. I just walked in the studio and hardly said hi to anybody."
Yeah.
And I got to
Because
get
we're
back
on a
up.
hamster wheel, right? So
Yes.
here's another thing that, given that I also deal with business leaders, and a lot of people may have their own businesses, and I invite you to do this when you have your meetings and stuff like that. Because often when I used to go into meetings and stuff like that, you would hear like, this is wrong, this person hasn't done this inventory hasn't come in, or this is not built. And you're constantly going through that. I don't have this, I don't do this.
I totally do that, just so you know.
I hear you, my friend. I hear you. Here's the thing, right? Is when I have my meetings now, I get everybody to say one thing that they're grateful for, or one thing that is a positive in their life for that particular week. It could be personal, it could be business, whatever. They have to. And it's so interesting that recently I had a meeting where there was an executive that joined our meeting, and we put the executive on spot, and he was stunned. He's like, I don't know. I don't have anything good to say. And it's very hard sometimes to dig deep into those things. Even we look at our media, right? I stopped listening to the news because the first 8 or 9 segments are all about what's wrong with everything else. The world, the politics, whatever the case may be, everything is wrong. And then they have a little bit at the end. Can we switch it around? Once you do that positive, you raise that vibration, and the challenge that you were looking at is no longer a challenge, but it turns into an opportunity. And that's what we need to do.
Okay. I think that this was powerful for me today, because everything you're talking about, I do. I'll sit in a meeting and I'm like, how many freaking times I got to tell you guys, this is what I said to do. You don't do it. I never sit down and say, super grateful for you guys today, and then hammer them, because it's going to be really hard to hammer them after I say I'm super grateful for you.
But you know what? I think it's you'll still be able to do it, except they'll receive it better. The moment you start with that negativity, they're already in that low vibration. Now they're connecting with you at the lower vibration. But if you say, hey, look, you know what? These are our achievements today. And I invite you to ask them to speak first as well. What was good for you today? What happened this week that you're grateful for? And have them speak up first. So now they're already at that higher vibration. When you're talking to them, you're now communicating at a much different level than at a defensive level. Because those lower vibrations of fear, that anger, are all lower vibrations, right? So as soon as you tell me as an owner, this didn't go well, you're like, he doesn't appreciate me. I'm not listening to anything he's saying now because it's going from one ear to the other. Or I'm in that defensive mechanism, but he doesn't understand, but he doesn't understand. But as soon as you have a positive, now, yes, there's a bit of empathy with this. And how can I now serve to make it better?
Perfect advice, especially for me. That's the thing about these podcasts I do. I get a lot of feedback on how awesome it is, and how I tell everybody it is just for me. Yeah. Usually I get to have these insights of a lot of things in life, but I think I think we are all a lot more similar than we put out.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
We have, there's people sitting here going, I do that. Right.
Yeah.
Sandy was here. She says, I was a professional victim for about 2 decades until I did the grilling healing work and accepted I'm not what's happening to me.
Absolutely.
What else? It's
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
good stuff. I need to try that with my kids and husband. Leading off with gratitude and praise will absolutely change the game. Sandy, it's so funny. I was just sitting thinking about that when AlKarim was talking about what it's, I'm like, what would it be like in your house if you started off with gratitude? I can tell you this from a man. Now I've been divorced for a long time, but I couldn't imagine when I was married. Gosh, I'm trying to think back if that would ever even happened, but I couldn't imagine my wife saying the first thing in the morning is, I am super grateful for you and thank you for providing for the family. I mean, to tell you, I'd probably leave the house. I'd take a freaking bullet for anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That would set me, that would put like a Captain America, on my chest and ready for the day. And I don't recall that in my marriage it ever being that way. But
I'll tell you, Mark, 8-9 years ago, if you had asked me, I would have told you that I'm exactly in the same boat as you, right? Like, I don't think I heard that from my kids. I don't think I heard that from my wife. And more so, I don't think I ever did that, because it was always what was wrong. Like I said, I'd come home and my kids would not tell me. Like, there were times where my wife would literally hold my chest and say, you know what, listen, if you don't like the life you're living, leave it, right? Because of that anger, the frustration at work, I just brought it home and I just piled it on and I piled it on. But when I went through this mind shift of this energy healing and the coaching, and that's what I help my clients with, and that's the difference that I bring, right? I've gone through it. And when somebody's gone through it, you're not just doing academics anymore. And now my kids are in this position as well. Like, mom will pick up dinner and like, no matter what it is, it's like, hey, thank you for picking up dinner. All of a sudden, what do you want to do next time? You want to pick up dinner again. Mm-hmm. And why do we call today's time the present? Because that in itself is a gift. Now, if we're not being grateful for that gift that we're getting every day, is the universe going to keep on giving us good gifts? Right? And that's why we need to give that gratitude to everybody around us, the universe, and you get more and more of it. If it was your birthday, Mark, and I sent you a gift and you did not acknowledge it, maybe next year, if you're still my friend, I'll give you another gift. Third year, I'll give you the gift again. But if you have not acknowledged it, what am I going to do the fourth year? I'm going to say, you know what? Mark doesn't need that gift anymore. Right. He doesn't acknowledge it. The present is a gift. That's why it's called the present, right? Present and gift are synonyms. So we have this gift that's a present to us, no matter what it is, even if it's a challenge, because it's only there to make us better. So let's be in gratitude of that as well. And as soon as you do that, now here's another tip that I'm going to leave you, because we're almost coming up to the end. When you are challenged and you have a really difficult time, whether it's with your children, your spouse, your coworkers, respond with how wonderful. And they will dilute that whole conversation as opposed to becoming defensive. So somebody says, you know what, I had a really bad day today, You say, well, how wonderful. And they'll say, what do you mean by that? Well, listen, it was bad. Were you able to solve it? Yes, I did find a solution. How wonderful you found the solution. So you have the ability to be able to address even the most of challenging times. Next time you're in a similar situation, remember that you have the strength and the ability to do that. How wonderful.
Awesome. Such an awesome That's really good. Sandy says, whoosh, this sounds amazing. Joe and I are coming up on 20 years, and there's no better time for a level up on the wife end. She says, Joe will thank you later, guys.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you. Happy anniversary.
That's going to be, you're welcome, Joe. You're welcome, Joe. That was really good. Well, let's talk about how people can get a hold of you. Let's
Absolutely.
I don't want to, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from this time with you today. I'm not kidding. When I say I took a lot out of this, and I will implement some of it today because I want to see how it's going to work. You know what I mean?
And I love to find out, because I know that the stories that I have to share are just incredible. So yours would be an added story that I'd love to be able to share with others as well. But you know what? There's a number of different ways. If you want to contact me, my phone number, I give my phone number to everybody that wants to connect with me. It's 416-786-5173. My website is called setback-to-triumph.com. And literally, I take you from any setbacks that you have to triumph in a life of love, joy, and abundance. So, and if you want to connect with me, my email is NRJI, just the way you see it over there, .consulting@gmail.com.
Awesome. I will have this, AlKarim, I will have this by end of day. It will be also on audio. And
Nice.
Also, you'll be on my website. So if you could do me a favor when we're done here today, if you could just direct message me all the links that you want, it will be permanently on the website also under your bios and all that kind of stuff. So people can have a way of connecting with you. I'll make sure all that's on there. So it'll be the audio portion. This will already be loaded and on YouTube by the time we're done here. So you always have the audio. I'll give you the link to what the YouTube is, and you can share. And if there's a way that you want it personally downloaded so you can have our episode, there's no problem with me, getting that to you also, however that looks. And because I really want to encourage people on this particular podcast to reach out, to listen to it, and get something from this, especially from somebody that's gone through it. Gone through the anger stages. I'm a pretty intense dude. You may not know that kind of looking at me here, but I'm telling you, I'm a pretty alpha male, and I lived that life of super anger and all that kind of stuff for a long time. And this past, I don't know, I was supposed to be in the hospital. I can tell you that right now. I was supposed to not have this conversation with you. God had different plans for me, so we can have this conversation today after I went through that hospital thing. Because I'm telling you, a lot of idle time sat with me in there.
Yeah.
And I was so anxious in there wanting to get out and get after life again that it was as we spoke right now, a text message came by that says, I saw it's my doctor saying, hey, just so you know, all your levels for pancreatitis are all at where they're supposed to be now. I mean, I was healed from this for like relatively quick. You know what I mean? I went back to lifting a little bit last night. And I spoke about gratitude last night because I just said, man, I said, you better be thankful for your health, man, while you got it, and get after it, man. And so I just did that video last night. So I really appreciate this time. Look forward to, I have another, my podcast will be expanding. And what it's going to be called is, because I'm going to be calling on you again, but the next one is going to be, it's called Beyond the Mat still, but it's going to be called, it's going to be more of a 20-minute type version podcast and not live, right? And it's going to be Beyond the Mat After Dark. And what that means is something a little bit, we concentrate on this one thing and we say, hey, this is whether it's a resilient mindset or whatever that looks like. And I'm going to have guests on, and I'm going to be able to record 10 of these at a time and with different guests. And then we'll put them out. So, and get a different audience where it's a little bit more at night and where people are kind of winding down, and it's 20 minutes. They can get this positivity in there. And so I'd definitely be asking you back on for that. I kind of think, and I think I think gratitude would be an awesome topic on that, where it's just concentrated on that. So I look forward to it. So thanks so much for rescheduling for me on this.
No,
thank you
pleasure.
for spending this time with me. I had just an awesome time. Sandy, thank you for all the stuff. And I'll hit this outro. You're welcome to bounce if you'd like, and I'll make sure, if you can, just send me all your info and contact info, and I'll make sure it's online today. Sound good?
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
All right. Thanks, AlKarim.
You've been listening to Real Talk with Mark Cox. Real life, real topics, real conversation. We're passionate about motivation, fitness, self-defense, weight loss, and coming at it from a real angle. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you had fun. We know we did. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on Instagram and Facebook at MarkCox100. Make sure to subscribe and review. And tell a friend or two about the show. For more, hit up the website at markcox.com. Till next time, keep it real.